speaker is Jamie Bray. She's a licensed social worker. She's going to talk about some of the work she does in the schools. You know, I'm so glad we have some school officials here, because more often than not, we find that school officials run into some very disruptive behavior, where they find these teens or these kids with these sudden outbursts of anger, these unstable and chaotic relationships. Some of them are cutting. And they're thinking to themselves, you know, this is more, as Perry Hoffman said, this is more than just typical teenage attitude and acting up. There's something else going on here. And so we're very fortunate to have Jamie here, because she was actually contacted by the Director of Special Education of a very large school district here in Atlanta, which will remain unnamed. And they asked her to, about 2 years ago, to work with the social and emotional curriculum, become a part of that, using DBT as a prevention therapy. So I think this is fascinating. I feel like we're so fortunate to have found her. She does a skill a week class with parents, teachers, and the pupils. So now, obviously something's working well. She's in her second year, and she is now working in 8 classrooms within the district, both in the elementary and the middle schools. So something must be working well there. She works with Alan Miller's book, DBT in Schools, which is Tier 1 and 2. And she's obviously well qualified for the job, because she is an intensively trained DBT therapist by Marshall Linehan, Sherry Manning, another noted name in the industry who's written another very good book, and other trainers at Behavioral Tech, which is Marshall Linehan's organization. She's also adjunct faculty, a professor at the University of Georgia in Athens, and teaches master's level social work students in foundation, field instruction seminars, play therapy, and advanced practice for individuals. So here's Jamie to share what she's experienced taking it to the schools.
Okay, can people hear me? So let's see. There we go. Okay. So as Susan said, I have been running sort of this trial by error, trial by fire maybe, program in the school system. I've read books, namely DBT in Schools. I also have my training, and I have modified some of the adolescent manual to make it more understandable for younger children. And I'm not doing a research project. I have no real, data. I have what's happening for me and these kids, because I'm in the trenches. So just keep all of that in mind. I'm not going to have graphs. I'm not going to have any subject pools. It's not been researched. It's just trial by fire, okay? Because we got to start somewhere, right? And so what happened was the administrators of the school system were interested in models that they could help manage these high-risk children. And the children were presenting themselves in early, in kindergarten, in first grade, that kind of stuff. And mostly it was a behavioral type of challenge, but those behaviors emanated from the emotion dysregulation. And so what they were seeing is that even in the classrooms, they would have youngsters who would have the dysregulated emotions for a prolonged period of time, and had a hard time going back to baseline. So all of those things that we see in teenagers. And so actually, this is my third year. It started in 2014. They approached me, we talked about it, and we did this pilot project with 2 elementary, even before my time, they first did 2 high school classes, and then they decided from that, although it was successful, they really wanted to do a younger population, because they felt like early intervention was important, and we all know that's what we're doing here. And so they then started, okay, so we started in 2015 with these 2 elementary school groups, and most of all of the children that I am serving are have an IEP, and they are in the emotional and behavioral intervention classroom setting, either for all day or part of the day, depending on their IEP. And so that very first year, not only were the children, getting the skill of the week, but we also did some brief teacher trainings throughout the year to try to expose the teachers to the DBT skills and various interventions. And the same for the parent trainings. We had those 2 to 3 times a year just to say, this is what your child is doing, and here are some of the things that your children have been learning. So very, very different. It was really an exposure as opposed to actual skills groups. The children were in the skills groups, but the parents weren't. Follow me so far? Okay. What we did do with the parents, because all along we wanted the parents to know what was going on in the classroom, so each week there was an email blurb that the teachers would send out, that I wrote, and the teachers would send out to the parents of the children in their classroom, and it would discuss the skill of the week, what was the purpose of the skill, how we were going to practice it, and then how the teacher might be practicing it throughout the week when I wasn't there. The second year, we added 2 more groups at 2 more elementary schools. So by that time, we had 2 groups at 3 elementary schools, and then we added 2 middle schools. So that was last year. And then this year, we've kept everything that we had, and we've gone back to adding in 2 more high school groups. So what we learned from 2014 is that, high schoolers, they know everything. And so, and we did too when we were high schoolers, right? Like, who wants to hear it from somebody because I know it already? And so what we learned from the first time is that we wanted to invite them, and we wanted to get their buy-in. So that way we had people who were really invested in learning skills to make their life worth living. Okay, so like I said, the email is sent on Monday morning, and because I'm at these different schools, some schools have a skill of the week on Tuesday, some schools have a skill of the week on Thursday, but the teacher does send the relevant skill to the parents, and then for the teacher portion of it, then I'm going to let them know, hey, when I get there on Tuesday, I'm going to need certain supplies. I'll bring my own, but go ahead and have these handouts prepared and copied for everybody, because everybody has a notebook. And those handouts, as I said, are what I'm pulling from Alec Miller's DBT Adolescent Manual. It's the Miller and Rathaus manual. I let them know of any YouTube videos that I might need. I love YouTube. Who doesn't? You can find anything you want to know. My thermostat broke over the summer, and I looked it up on YouTube. If I need to put in a zipper, I'm looking it up on YouTube. So YouTube is just fabulous, and it's got some really good clips for all kinds of skills. And I'm very thankful for the people that are creative and posting their stuff on YouTube, because it really helps all of us not reinvent the wheel. And children don't, you probably will feel this way by the time this is over, but children don't just want to hear me talk. They want to see it with other people, hear it from other people. So I use YouTube quite a bit. So just like in outpatient groups, we start with mindfulness practice in each group. I mean, it is truly run like a skills group. And so what's important for children and the teachers and the parents is that I am trying to say, you know what, mindfulness is not all about breathing, because some people can't tolerate, just like Marsha Linehan says, some people cannot tolerate focusing on their breath. That is really too uncomfortable. And so I actually show that video to parents and teachers, but I also talk about how mindfulness is just being present in the moment, and that it can be active, that it's not all breath work, it's the beginnings of breath work, but it can be active, it can be passive. There's all sorts of things with mindfulness. So I'm really stressing that. And with the children and the teachers, we also talk about non-judgmentally. So I really like it when I hear things like, isn't that a judgment? And we emphasize how judgments can be, positive and negative, so to speak. So each week I go into class. The teacher already has everything that I'm going to need. We practice mindfulness. And this is how I do it, because children like to be a part of everything, particularly the younger children. I keep a list and I rotate. So during mindfulness, every child gets to be the bell ringer, because that's an important position. And so I'm always wanting to, build kids up, and the mindfulness bell ringer is important. So we have a different child ring the bell each week. And yes, I usually coach them before, because some people are really eager. So I have to coach them before, remember, I'll give you the signal. This is the signal to ring the bell when I need you to. So they get to take turns with that. I introduce the skill of the week, and from there, I am doing every creative thing I can imagine to demonstrate in an experiential way what the skill is. So, for example, the what skills and the how skills. Well, we've made butter. We've made Play-Doh. And for example, when I'm trying to teach the what skills and the how skills with DBT, the what skills, observe, describe, and participate, one mindfully, doing what works, and non-judgmentally. So I have the heavy cream. This is the making butter. I have it covered up. No one can see that it's heavy cream. It's a classroom. They think I picked up a carton of milk on the way down from the cafeteria, and I pour it out in the jar, and I hear, ew, that looks sour. So we say, yes, that was a judgment, and we keep moving on. Right? And we say, oh, this looks thicker. We're observing it. This looks thicker than regular milk. Let's see what happens. We're shaking it. Everybody gets a turn to shake the milk. And then a few brave souls, we're describing it along the way, right? It's cream, not milk. Anyway, we're describing it along the way. And then someone says, it's starting to get lumpy, it's white, what is this? So we make a few hypotheses about what it is. A few brave souls will try it and then say, hey, this is butter. And we notice that it's not yellow like what we purchase in the store, because we didn't add any yellow dye number something. But we do have the unsalted and salted varieties. And so those are, that's just an example of experiential learning, because these classrooms go all the way down to kindergarten. And so we all could say, they're too young to get these concepts. And truthfully, I used to think that. But then I was saying, well, we have to be pioneers with these things, because these are children that have gotten kicked out of preschools. Okay. And so when you see parents struggle, like the parents that I'm working with with the schools and in my practice, these are parents who are like, well, where do we find childcare? And what am I doing wrong? Because who gets kicked out of preschool? And these sorts of things. And so I have to be able to do something to demonstrate the point. And then naturally, like every other DBT skills group, the skills, they just keep building week after week. And so the elementary school groups meet weekly. The middle and high school groups meet bi-weekly for a little bit longer. And that was not something that I designed. I really had to inherit that, because they're trying to work in a system of credits, etc. So, as I mentioned, the parent training part consists of the weekly email, and then we have a 90-minute training 3 to 4 times a year. And initially, it was, giving them the overview of DBT, emphasizing that what I'm doing in this school with your children is one part of an adherent DBT program. It is not full DBT. So what you see in terms of efficacy and the research, evidence-based, is a full adherent program. So I really, really try to emphasize that to not only the teachers, but also the parents. However, your child, and all children, all adults, need coping skills. We have to start somewhere to learn coping skills. And so that's what I talk to them about. We talk about the biosocial theory, naturally, because, again, these parents have been through the ringer. I know I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. And, I want them to understand that they're not being judged, and that, we're all just doing the best we can. And the unity that ends up forming in these parent groups has been wonderful, very much like what you all are talking about with the Family Connections programs. So the first few meetings were predominantly overview, skills-based, didactic in nature, with even some experiential components for the families, because I wanted them to truly understand and know what language to speak, what examples to bring up with their children. And then over time, at the end of last year, I did a training on validation. And it was very powerful for the families, because, well, first of all, we're all guilty of it, because, we're sitting there trying to work, because we're trying to work and keep our kids and, do the 20 million things a week. So we're all on our phones. And so I had this one child say to me, "Miss Jamie, the thing I like about you is you listen." And so it's true, we do, and that's meaningful. And many of us have forgotten what it's like to listen, and I'm guilty of it myself, because, sometimes I'm trying to do multiple things at once too. But that was really important. It was like an aha moment. And so I wanted to share with the parents, how important it is to kind of go back to the old school of before cell phones. I was there. And really just kind of be present in that moment. And so out of that validation group, and we ended up just doing a roundtable discussion, and the families were talking about their struggles, and how, difficult it is for things like finding a Girl Scout or a Boy Scout troop for their children, finding extracurricular activities, finding childcare, you know, all of these things. And so one parent recently, we had a parent training earlier this year, and one parent has agreed to form a social media group that they can share resources, whether it's childcare, whether it's pediatricians, books, articles, etc. Because that's the other thing is, as our speakers earlier were talking, you know, when you have strong emotions, when you start to talk about borderline personality disorder, you know, there are clinicians who say, whoa, you know. And, you know, some of us are like, okay, come on, you know, doors open, right? And so that was really lovely for me to see, because just like in the Family Connections program, people are so hungry for the understanding of what it's like and the struggles, and they get very isolated. You know, and then of course, the isolation can occur, and you know, marriages erode because they don't really have a way to go out. And I had one family say to me, you know, it's been 15 years. We haven't been on a date in 15 years because, you know, here we are. We're isolated. So in terms of the teacher training, that first year, like I said, there was this overview of skills. The second year, we expanded it to actually be training days. And then the third year, which was this past summer, right before school started, we did more of an experiential training for the teachers as well. So they, you know, I like games. I just love games, and I'm a game person, and I don't really like strategy games. I like luck games because I want to play. I don't want to have to think. So that probably says more than you want to know about me, but anyway, we're all just doing the best we can, right? So that said, we put skills in a hat. And I passed out candy. And if you had a Snicker bar, you had to get in a certain group. And if you had a cinnamon, you had to get in another group, and so on and so on. And then you had to, I had books there, we had resources, and so you had to figure out what skill, you were assigned a skill, and you had to teach it to your colleagues creatively. Because I really wanted the teachers to become comfortable with all the variations of how to teach the children on the days that I wasn't there. In other words, how to reinforce the skill on the day that I wasn't there, because repetition is very important. And so out of that came, they have a web-based learning instruction. And so teachers are able to say, well, you know, the book of My Mouth is a Volcano. Anybody know that book? My Mouth is a Volcano. Yes. So that book, hey, I used that book in terms of, you know, teaching such and such a skill, and so forth and so on. So just this year, I mean, this is a trial and error thing too, but they are able to load up the exercises for each other so that they can reinforce the skill of the week. All right, everybody with me so far? Okay. And this, you know, this is just things that I find on the internet. I don't even do Pinterest, but I want to. I can't quite, you know, I like YouTube so much. I'm probably not, like, I need to know Pinterest more. But that said, so these are some of the ways that we start with emotion regulation. and I find stuff on the internet, and we talk about ways that you can feel your emotions in different parts of your body. And these are, this is for the kindergartens, the first graders, the second graders. And of course, in terms of, their lives, for whatever reason, they may have missed really learning some of this. And so, right at first, I had a lot of judgments like, I'm going to go into a second grade class and they're going to look at me like I've got 3 heads because I'm going to pull out this paper. And, but then I realized they, for whatever reason, might have missed it. And even if they didn't miss it, they're going along with it because it's something novel and different. And then they can color either when I'm there or not when I'm there, of, feeling the emotions and where they might feel the emotions in their body. This was something that came to me in the middle of the night when I couldn't sleep. And so I thought, how can I demonstrate an emotions thermometer, like teaching kids the SUDS level, that your emotions can, get from here to here really quickly. And so it's a 3D emotions thermometer, and normally there's a little red button glued on the end of the zipper. I've got to find the right glue because a glue gun doesn't cut it, not for a long term. I'm just going to tell you that. I messed up. But that said, so it's like the mercury, but then, most people don't know what a mercury thermometer is anyway. And so I'm like, Jamie, get a grip. And so I figured I could just do away with the button altogether, right? And so, but they can, hands-on, we pass out the emotions thermometer. How are you feeling? Identify how you're feeling. The, rate how you're feeling on the SUDS scale. And then, I don't know if you can tell, but it's actually a little pouch. And so most people can fit a couple of skills in their pouch in case their emotions go all the way up to 10. So sometimes I show them how to, like a streamer. And so they're just, a party streamer, right? The crepe paper stuff. So there's a little piece folded up in there, perhaps, whatever they want folded up in there, but this is something, and so they can hold it in front of their face, take a deep breath, and the idea is to just keep it going in the wind for as long as possible, because we all know that once you can do breath work, it's very regulating, right? So, or maybe they have a small bottle of bubbles in there. It's all with permission, because we do emphasize that I don't want to be fired by your teachers or your parents, and so we have to get permission for the bubbles, etc. But, or maybe there's some sort of sensation in there that they can keep, or, you get the idea, right? Then, this was really, really unique. I have to say that I don't even understand why this school system wants to remain anonymous, because I'm telling you, they are progressive. And I really think they should be tooting their horn. However, I have to respect them and their wishes. But not only did they agree to do DBT in the classrooms, and they've been expanding the programs, etc., they also sent the kids on a couple of field trips. So the first year we went to, and a lot of them hadn't been field trips before, but the first year we went to this horse barn, and there they are writing encouraging statements on the stalls with chalk to the horses, because that's one of the DBT skills. And then also at the horse barn, they had some problem solving. I think that's on the next, like an Ebola kind of a thing. So to mindfulness hike at this mountain, that was what was there at the top of it. Observe and describe, etc. Now, I'm going to butcher her name. I think it's pronounced Petra, okay, I'm not going to be able to do it. Somebody help me. Thank you, loudly. Perpetua, Francesca. So, she is the researcher, and she has adapted the DBT skills even more, which now I've started to do too. But that first year, I didn't have it, and so that was us at the park making contributing skills that we were going to leave behind for the birds at the bird feeders, and so kids really love that. And then there we are at the horse farm doing the problem solving as well. And what I didn't tell you is that when I get going because, I work with kids, right? I've got a nanosecond of time to get in there and get out because they have short attention spans. And I didn't really, this is a pioneer work, and I didn't expand it. So we may be way much more on time than you thought. That said, I do want to give everybody the opportunity to ask questions, and I'll try to answer them as best I can.
And if you would wait till Bill gets to you with your questions so we can pick you up in the mic. We will not video you, we're just going to take your voice. Okay? Who's got a question for Jamie? This is so innovative, Pine Caruso.
Okay.
So how did the school pay for you to do this? I mean, did they get a grant? I mean, how?
So I have been trying to figure that out. I know that the first year there was a grant, and then I know that at some point they put it within their budget.
So right now you're only working with kids who have an IEP?
Correct.
So it's from, are they giving it through the IEP budget, through the special services budget?
That would be my guess. Okay. Is that they're using some of the monies, the federal dollars that would be allowed under the IEP. That would be my guess. However, I have not gotten, that's purely speculation on my part. I haven't gotten confirmation of that.
Anyone else?
Are you familiar? Okay. Are you familiar with PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention and Support?
No.
Okay, that is an organization that does school climate, and I actually work for the school system here in Metro Atlanta, and they keep data. It's in a school. It's behavior problems with kids. It could even be kids that are late to school. Mm-hmm. And so they're charting it, but then they have a behavior person inside the school that's going to take that child out of the classroom, work with them, try to identify the situation. So it's a different mindset where they're not saying, okay, this child is bad behavior. What they're looking at is encouraging the positive behavior. So I was just curious to see if that was a part of the program with this school system, and that's actually a program that's been around for about 20 years. And they just started it, and they've noticed the incidences of behavioral issues and referrals have gone down tremendously in those schools. So, okay, so that's not a part of that.
So they started out with something more like the Boys Town model, and they do have a behaviorist that, but they're not using the Boys Town model now. They're using some pieces of it, but that was part of why they brought me in, because they wanted more evidence-based models to work with. They do have a behaviorist that comes in to the classroom that's a full-time position, and we'll look at ways to effectively manage certain behaviors in the classroom. And it's not, I know it's not PBIS.
Is the teacher training, is it all teachers or just the teachers that are working with kids with EIP?
It is all of the teachers and the paraprofessionals who are working in the EBI classroom. We could expand it later. I mean, the sky's the limit, right, people?
Well, I think there is a need. I run a place where teachers come in and they create things, and I have to tell you, so many conversations I've heard where they gave you the bad kid. Oh, you poor thing. Or I had those kids last year. They did me a favor this year, and my class is yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of times the schools will push for the kids to stay in a mainstream classroom, and it's very difficult to get an IEP. So you have a lot of students that would benefit from a program like this, and teachers that need to be educated on a program like this, and they're just kind of getting lost in the shuffle. So if there was a way, I don't know if you're going to expand to other school districts or other schools. This is great. I mean,
so we just have to get other schools to put the welcome mat out. I think that there are plenty of clinicians who would be willing to do that. And I'm only one person. And I definitely think that there are plenty of clinicians who would be willing to. The same thing, this very school system actually put an ad in the newspaper. I saw it with my own eyes. Child find. They were looking for families who might think that there's something that their children might need extra support for, and it was an early intervention program, and so they're saying like, hey, if your child has speech therapy or occupational therapy or any of these things, or you think that they might need it, here's a website. Go ahead and fill out an application, and it goes to the Director of Special Education. So they're looking to identify those people. And then what they told me recently is that despite the fact that it's a very large school system, they've been able to close some of the classrooms. So they thought that because of the growth in the county that would, people moving in and moving out, that they would have to expand the classrooms, but they are providing support in, once you're in this classroom, then you can move out with other supports. You don't necessarily have to need it. And they're working on early intervention. Mm-hmm. So I hope the answer to that is I don't know, but I would love it if other school systems took up the initiative.
Jamie, I have a question. How are you demonstrating to the school that what you're doing, your DBT program, is effective?
So to be honest, remember that part that I said I'm not a researcher? And so we tried to do just a pre-test, post-test kind of a thing early on that first year. And I messed up because I said test, pre-test, post-test. And so, particularly the older, like 4th, 5th, and the middle schoolers, they're just... So I do have reviews between modules, and guess how we do it? A game. And so, I'm just trying to anecdotally see who is able to match up the skill with the description or things like that. But sadly, I know that evidence-based, there needs to be more evidence-based. Who's a researcher in here? We need to be friends. Okay. All right, we can be friends. So I know that it needs to be done, and I haven't done that.
Are you finding the elementary school children will retain what you teach them?
So the first year, I was disappointed. I just have to be honest, right? But then the second year started showing a little more improvement. And of course, when I heard, is that a judgment? I really liked hearing that. And so I do, and that the second year, what we did was just focus on emotion regulation and distress tolerance with the elementary. So the first semester, they had emotion regulation, distress tolerance. The second semester, they had emotion regulation and distress tolerance, because I found that that was pretty critical. And then this year, we're going to expand again with the elementary students, going back to relationships. But I am finding someone retains what's important to them. They don't always retain the same thing, but they retain what's important to them, which is fabulous, because if that's what they're doing, that's what they're using.
Quick question. I know you're concentrating mostly on elementary and middle school kids. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. I know you're concentrating mostly on elementary and middle school kids. What about things for high school? I mean, I know you briefly touched on high, but anything going on for those kids?
So, like I said, this year they put me back. That was where they started, and in 2 classrooms. And this year, the third year, they've put me back into 2 high school classrooms. I do have colleagues who want to be able to go into high schools in other systems and, just work with kids who might be high risk, but who aren't identified as high risk. And they are having trouble getting their foot in the door. And so, it's just about, trying creative ways. Can you give us the space? Could we meet before school? Could we meet after school? Could we meet at lunch? Those kinds of things. Because once you get to high school, those credits are so important for graduation. And so that becomes a little bit extra dicey. But so I'm back in the high school now, but just for 2 classes.
Other questions at all? I guess class dismissed.
Hey, woohoo!